Hi everyone, Glenn here from Elite Brands again. And so to continue with our Sim Theory series of videos, I wanted to go through one of the workflows that I go through, especially for those people who are using Performance Max campaigns. Now, I've got open Google Ads Editor here, and I've got a lot of Performance Max campaigns. So anyone who knows how to use Google Ads Editor, you can pull up Performance Max campaigns and have a look at asset groups. And there's a section inside Google Ads Editor where you can click on View Asset Details. Now, what that will do is it will show you a window. A window will pop up, and I'll just drag this down here. I'll grab that out of the way because we don't need that window here. It will show you the performance of all of your assets. Now, generally what I like to do, once I've got a performance rating, I'll run a filter in here, and I want to run a performance rating of low. And then generally I'll sort them by asset type, and headlines, long headlines, descriptions, anything that's low, that's ideally what we want to swap out. Now, one of the problems that I've encountered, especially with using large language models, is you can create an assistant, you can use a GPT, you can use OpenAI, and you generally get fairly generic ad copy. And there's two types of methodologies. Well, there's four actually. I create 4 sets of ad copy, and I'll show you what I mean. So when I'm looking at swapping out headlines, long headlines, or descriptions, I'll come into Sim Theory, and I have multiple assistants. So in my previous videos, I've spoken about assistants. Again, you could use a GPT with instructions, or you could use artifacts in Claude or gems in Gemini. But I'm using Sim Theory for this, and I have some Performance Max assistants in here that I will run. I've got 1 and 2, but there's 2 in particular, 2 other assistants that I like to run. And for those old school marketers, they've probably heard of the OG of marketing in Google Ads, Perry Marshall, and he had a methodology called the Swiss Army knife. And the Swiss Army knife basically had, the concept was that there was 16 different types of ad structures, and they varied around relationships, imagery and verbs, emotions, types of statements, time, towards, away from, blah, blah, blah. And I'll share with you these concepts. And I've created an assistant based around these 16 blades to create me different types of headlines and different types of descriptions using these concepts. Then I've got another assistant that I also run, and it's called the 12 Google Ads concepts. Now, I derive this idea from a Reddit subreddit that I spoke about in a previous video, and it speaks about these 12 different types of concepts. There's the niche expert, the differentiator, the standout feature, the benefit banker, the target filter, the alliterative artist, the scorekeeper, the conversationalist, the speed demon, etc., etc. So what I did is I created 2 different types of experts. So based around these 12 ad concepts and the Swiss Army knife, I then will run my Performance Max inside Sim Theory. I'll run my Performance Max assistants. Then I will run, and I've created 2 assistants for the Swiss Army knife and the 12 Google Ads concepts. And I'll share with you these prompts. And to give you an example, what this does then is it gives me the output. So I will give inside the assistant, I will give the website or the link, and I'll say, using your instructions, please create me optimized headlines, descriptions, long headlines, etc. for this website URL. So then it'll use the Firecrawl MCP inside the assistant, crawl the website, get all the information. Then it gives me multiple options. Now, it's a little bit of work. You need to run all 4 of them, but it really gives me some interesting ideas using the features and the benefits. And so just to give you an idea here, this is for a product, and I've got my 2 Performance Max assistants that I ran that gave me lots and lots of different headlines, long headlines, short descriptions. So I will go through the low performing assets. And then what I do is I find that when I'm running the Swiss Army or the 12 ad concepts, it really gives me some interesting headlines and some interesting descriptions based on the concepts of the Swiss Army knife on these 16 blades and the 12 Google Ads concepts based around the scorekeeper, the conversationalist. And generally when it outputs the information, it'll give me, so for argument's sake, I'm looking at the Swiss Army knife. The blade one is about relationships. So it talks about, ride together, make rain your daily ride, trust your daily. So this is a relationship type headlines. Then it's got descriptions, and for the emotions, confidence, calm, joy, pride, relief, serenity. So it's using, depending on the blade for the Swiss Army knife, it will give you different types of emotions on blade number 3. Blade number 4 is about types of statements. Ready for rainy commutes. What powers your commute? So it's giving different emotional ideas on headlines instead of generic, ride with confidence, premium commuter skills, smart app integration. So then I can go through and pick the headlines and the descriptions that really resonate with me. And I think, wow, that's really quite interesting. And conversely, the same with the 12 ad concepts. There's the niche expert gives me 10 headlines and 4 descriptions here. And the niche expert also outputs why it gave these outputs. So when I'm looking at swapping out, and look, this could even be done at the very start of creating a campaign. It can be when you're first building out the campaign and you just need ideas to create them. Or, as I mentioned before, when I'm looking to replace low performing assets, in particular headlines and in particular descriptions, I like to get as many options as possible and use these 2 assistants with these concepts to give me different ideas that that probably normally a large language model wouldn't just output when you just give it a website or you give it a link or you give it a URL. I often find, and I'm not saying that these are bad, but I often find that there's some really interesting headlines and descriptions that these 2 assistants, based around these concepts of the Swiss Army knife and the 12 Google Ads concepts based on these methodologies, gives me some really interesting angles and ideas. So we'll share with you these resources so that you can use them. Like I said, whether you go and open an account with SimTheory and use SimTheory, or anything where you can create your own assistant with custom instructions. Now, the Swiss Army knife method, I've created a text file. It's been out for about 15 years, I think. It's a very, very old school technique, but it's tried and true. It's proven, and it's about a lot of different types of psychological triggers that ad copy. This is back in the days when I think you had 1 headline or 2 headlines, 3 descriptions or something like that. And that's all you could do. But now with RSA ads, you can have 15 headlines, 4 descriptions. But having these different ideas, I find just gives me more options. There's way more options to choose from here, and I can keep these, and every time I check the performance inside Performance Max, or even inside RSA ads, if you're running search campaigns and you're finding low performing assets, this gives me some really good ideas on how I can get high performing or better headlines and descriptions so that I can improve the performance of my ad campaigns. It's one of the things that we do as marketers, especially inside Google Ad, that when you are checking the performance of campaigns, that, geez, I've got to swap out these low performing assets. That's best practice. I mean, theoretically, you could keep them in there, but I like to keep swapping them out. Anything that's low, I like to go, right, these are low. I'm now going to start swapping these out for new headlines or new descriptions. So that's one of the things that I like to do. Having the tools in my arsenal that allow me to think laterally or just give me new ideas, I think is perfect. So thanks for watching. Like I said, we'll share with you the information and the prompts that I use so you can use them in your own large language models, and I hope you find them helpful. Thanks again for watching.